So let's talk about the inflation game. You're playing the inflation game, you're losing the inflation game, and you didn't even want to play in the first place. How bad can inflation get? How is it going to affect you? And it will affect you. It'll affect your way of life. It'll affect your ability to pay bills. And also, what can you do about it? That's what we're going to discuss today. There's one particular article that I'm just going to paraphrase, but I'm going to show it here in a moment and go through it. It's very interesting, and you need to hear it because it could change what you do in terms of your savings moving forward and how you're paying your bills, getting out of debt, etc. First, I always like to say the government doesn't care about you, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Banks don't care about you. It's up to you to take control of your financial future because real freedom is financial freedom. On this channel, I just try to help you get out of debt. Lots of videos on that and try to help you save and make sure you retain the power of your savings so that things like inflation don't eat up your savings. If you appreciate what I do, please hit the like button. Leave some comments if you agree with what I'm talking about or disagree. And hopefully this is going to make a difference in people's lives because they're going to think a little more towards the future. This article is on a website that was founded by Peter Schiff. He's an economist, an investor. He predicted the 2008 crisis. Some people agree with some of his approaches, some people don't. But this is a very interesting article, and I'm going to kind of fly through it because here's how it affects you. And it may affect you potentially in a good way if rates come down. But we all know that the federal government is in about $27 trillion worth of debt right now. And it's growing at an incredible rate. I think it was about $1 trillion added just this year so far. This article was written, though, back in January. And they're pointing something out. And that is that in the next 12 months, in other words, in 2024, $6 trillion has to be refinanced. The government has to refinance it. What does that mean? Well, the government issues bonds. That's how they borrow money from the people. And they've issued 2-year, 3-year, 5, 7, 10, etc. And when those come up, they have to pay them back. So as an example, in 2021, just 3 years ago, they issued $1 trillion worth of 3-year bonds. So those 2021 bonds come due in 2024. Now back in 2021, the interest rates were around 0%. Now, as we all know, they are not 0%. They're significantly higher because the Fed raised rates. But those bondholders have to be paid back. How are they going to pay them back? They're going to issue $1 trillion worth of bonds, turn around and give that money to the people that they owe, and those new bonds will have the higher interest rates. That's bad for the government. How bad? They talk in this article that they believe that's going to add $300 billion a year to the government's budget just in interest expense increases. The government already pays $1 trillion a year in interest. It's gone up substantially over the past couple of years. And now they might add another $300 billion. So that'll be $1.3 trillion just in interest. As you can see, this is bad and it's not getting better. And they point out that, hey, if the Fed a couple years ago created $5 trillion in new money, which they did, and we had 9% inflation, imagine what 15 trillion would do. I don't know. Are we talking about 20% inflation? So what does this mean and why do you care? Well, if the government has all of this debt that needs to be refinance. In other words, they're going to issue new bonds and they're not going to be at 0%. They're now going to be at whatever the rate is, 4 or 5, I'm not sure. Then the interest expenses go up. They got to create new money. We're going to have more inflation potentially. I always have to say this is not financial advice. I'm just trying to point out my point of view. So even though you may see in the news that inflation's at 3% or 3.5 or whatever they'll tell you, but don't forget, it was only a couple years ago, it was 8%, it was 9%. Now, when they say inflation is 3%, that doesn't mean that everything is just up 3%. If you look back over 5 years, for example, eggs, I think, I looked it up online, were about $1.50 or $1.60 for a dozen. And that was the case for like 5 or 6 years. They shot up to over $4, now they're $3.20. So if they're double the price, they were $1.60, now they're $3.20 because we had that 8 and 9% inflation. Everyone says, oh, but don't worry. The 8 and 9% inflation's gone. It's only 3 now. That doesn't mean the eggs came back down to $1.60 and then went up by 3. They're staying where they're at. They're just going to continue to go up by 3% instead of 9%. So when the prices increased, as you know and you've seen, they didn't go back down. They stayed extremely high. It's still bad. It's still inflation. So what does this all mean for you? In all the videos I put together to try to help people get out of debt, we talk about credit card debt because it has a high interest rate. Around 24% average. It's been that way for a while. I looked again. All year, that's about the average. Car loans have gone up. Personal loans have gone up. Mortgage rates have gone up. So all these things, percentage-wise, your debt is becoming more expensive. So what's the government going to do? Well, they don't care about you. They're doing this in their own self-interest. I believed because the Fed has what they call two mandates, dual mandate. They're supposed to keep inflation down. They're supposed to keep unemployment down. So we don't want prices going too high, and we don't want people out of work. Okay. In order to try to get inflation down, they raised interest rates. And they raised what's called the Fed rate, which affects interest rates. They went from 0%, and now they're at, I think, 4.25. And it's been that way for a while. And they talked about all year how they might have, this was at the end of last year, in 2024 they might have 7 rate cuts and bring the rates down. Well, it hasn't happened because inflation's not under control. However, rates might come down. Why might they come down? If inflation's still a problem, and unemployment is going up, but it hasn't broken the economy to bring all the prices crashing down, and it hasn't brought down inflation, why would they lower interest rates? In their own self-interest. I believe we will have a rate cut potentially this year in 2024, and then maybe some more to follow because the government has to refinance. If you had to refinance your car and rates were 10% and you got to decide where rates would go, what would you do? Would you raise rates to 20% and refinance your car? No. Would you lower them to like close to 0? Yeah. You would say, oh, I get to decide my rate? How about 0? Or maybe 1%. I won't make it 1%. I don't want to be too greedy. So the government, I believe, might lower those rates, which will impact mortgage rates, credit card rates, personal loan rates. I'm telling you this because 2 things. I believe you always need to take a look at your debt scenario. And I put out 2 videos this week, or within the past week. And it was a video on, if you got a little extra money, should you pay down your car loan faster to get rid of it? Or should you take the money and invest it? Maybe in a savings account, a CD, a treasury. And I showed how you can analyze those 2 situations. Did another video, should you pay down your credit card faster or should you invest the money? We also created calculators that you can use and just put in the information and do it yourself so you can figure out what's best for you. The bottom line is if you're talking about a 24% interest rate, chances are it's best to get rid of that debt first. So you may want, in my opinion, because of this economic environment, to try to just get rid of debt as fast as you can during the year. Try to save a little if you can, because you want to have that emergency savings. Join me every Friday when I explain, in essence, that the dollar over time goes down in value. We know this because prices go up, inflation, but things like gold, silver, assets, even cryptocurrency is used to try to mitigate that inflation. So you turn your dollars into other assets that go up in value while the dollar comes down in value. And the dollar coming down in value seems to be getting worse and worse and happening faster and faster. All this government debt isn't helping. So 1, please watch my videos to help you get out of debt. And 2, please watch, I do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday to help encourage you to understand that the dollar is not your friend. Assets are your friend. Rich, rich, rich people do not sit around with all their money in cash. They put it in assets because they go up. Thanks for watching. I hope these videos are helpful. Please smash that like button if you would. Let me know if you find this helpful, and I hope I'm able to help change your thinking and look into the future. Watch some of these economic indicators and then make decisions that are best for you, your finances, and your future, as well as your family's future. Have a great day.